In this class, we are going to be addressing moving in trust, how to operate in trust, how to conduct yourself in trust. Now, a very interesting thought is, what is the opposite of trust? It's distrust. And there's a reason why we must move in trust. Because if you look at trust, the word trust, if you trust somebody, you feel safe, do you not? And if you do not trust somebody, you are not feeling safe and you're feeling like you have to watch your back all the time. So when you move in trust, it's the ultimate safety that you can put around yourself and your family in this crazy society and this crazy system that's been set up, where they basically use us against each other. All the hidden adhesion contracts like we addressed in the last class. So, trust is of ultimate importance. And let's use as the first example here the marriage license. Now, you take a man and woman who have learned to know each other. They decide they want to develop a partnership. They want to raise a family. They would, they believe that they can do this together. They believe that it can be successful in their relationship. So in times past, biblical times, ancient times, this kind of a thing was operated quite differently than it is today. Today, what's the first thing they do? They decide, they're going to get married. Now, the word marriage in the Black's Law is anything but a trusting, loving relationship, which we want to think that a marriage is. A marriage is basically an agreement contract with the state. So basically what the people are not realizing is that in that kind of scenario, they're agreeing together to form a partnership with the straw person, which is still another part of the United States, with both of their straw persons, and including the adhesion contract that they're going to create through that marriage license with the community law, the state, and so on. So, under the community law, like we addressed in the last class, everything that comes out of that marriage, including children, houses, lands, you name it, belongs to the community. The definition of that word community in that scenario there is the corporation. That's it. So how can we expect for a partnership like that to last? There's not trust, because you're giving your energy away unknowingly. I do not believe that if people knew what they were doing, they would do it. Unknowingly, both of you signed away your lives to slave this whole relationship. Everything that comes out of it belongs to the community, the corporation. So that's what you go into a marriage, a man and a woman go into a marriage with that on the table, not even knowing that's what they just signed. But even though they're not aware of it consciously, it is still there. It's the energetic thing that's on the table, that's always around them. You've probably seen this happen over and over. You'll see a couple that have been on the same page, they're working together, they live together, and after some years they decide, maybe a couple years, they're like, you know what, let's get married. So they go through this whole rigmarole, and they go and they get the state marriage certificate, sign it, go to a state approved pastor under a 501c3, which is not even a church. It's an arm of the government. Any organization under 501c3 is not a church. It is an arm of the government. And they get married, right? And often what you see is that what looked like a strong relationship prior to this falls apart. Some of them in less than a year. And if you sit back and observe, you go, what in the world? What happened? Why did, as soon as they got married, it fell apart? Well, it all has to do with the energetic workings of this thing. Selling your soul without even knowing you sold your soul. It's very dark, but it is a fact. So, how do we move into trust in that situation? What we have put together as ANPC International is using the ancient practices that were used prior to this kind of deception was in place, was called a marriage trust covenant. Now again, if you're not moving in trust, what are you moving in? The opposite of trust is deceit, is it not? So if you are not moving in trust in any area of your life, you are moving in deceit, even though you don't realize it. The deceit is the lie that they are telling you to get you to sign agreeing to the lie. So on a marriage trust covenant, it is a living man and woman coming together in trust. In trust. They are agreeing that they are fully responsible for themselves and their own actions in the relationship. They're coming together and forming a trust between each other, before themselves and their Most High God. And that's a very powerful bond. They say a threefold cord is not easily broken. And that's the essence of the marriage trust covenant, is the threefold cord. They are bringing themselves under trust, and trust is the center of the whole cord. When you go back to the other side, where you do a state marriage license, there's no cord that's woven. There's only two people unknowingly contracting to sell their soul to this state, this corporation, under the community law. So I would encourage you to actually go look it up. The community law that's part of the marriage license contract, and start reading. You need to get your Black's Law Dictionary and start looking up some of those words. They're very, very sly with how they put the words in these contracts, because the definition of a word in a Merriam-Webster dictionary is absolutely not the same at all as the definition of the same word in Black's Law Dictionary, Bouvier's Dictionary, and so on. So it's important to study these things, read, know that you can back it up, that you have seen it for yourself, so that you can move in confidence, because it's very important to have trust and confidence in what you're doing. If you don't trust yourself, no matter what you do, it's still not built and moving in trust. There's so many different aspects of moving in trust, from the way we structure the trust that we're going to operate in the public, to the way we trust one another, to the bottom line, the way we trust ourselves. Do we trust ourselves to follow our own gut instincts, our own gut feelings? Which, here's a very interesting point on that. The word gut feeling is the German word for God feeling. And we all have that. That's inborn in every human on earth. But most of the times we have been programmed from day one to throw it aside and say, oh, that's just crazy. I would never listen to that. But how many times are you facing a situation and you feel something in your gut? That's your intuition. And they have found, scientists have found, that the gut has 300 times more neurons than the brain has. Neurons being antennas that pick up the signals, pick up the truth, pick up everything around you. It's your GPS. And we've been taught from day one to throw out our gut feelings and to listen to the mind. And there's only one reason for that. The mind is the only way that the dark enemies can control the human psyche. The only way. If you could take somebody and you could shut down their mind to where they're only running on their gut, the gut feeling, the gut guidance, that would be heaven on earth. And the dark entities that feed off of our energy, our life force, create havoc in our life, they know that very, very well. That would be creating heaven on earth. And if we created heaven on earth, where would the dark entities be? They couldn't live here. They've got to create a hell so they're comfortable in it. You hear what I'm saying? So, trust is a very, very critical part. And again, we will say this again. The bottom line is trust your intuition. How many times have you been facing something and you're gonna follow a certain path that you've been told is the best, but you have this strange feeling in your gut, like almost this foreboding or fear, or I don't know what you want to call it, foreboding. Really, fear doesn't happen in the gut. Fear happens in the mind. But the gut will give you strong feelings of either peace or chaos. Now, granted, some of those things can go back to your health as well, because if your gut is unhealthy, if you've got a lot of bad microbes in your gut versus the good microbes, probiotics, your gut signals can be off. We have to realize that too. So, trust is really all that we have. So now let's get into moving into trust in all these different levels. Like we just said, once you learn to trust yourself, you're moving in trust in your gut. A healthy gut, hopefully. So then when you trust yourself, you can also move into trust with a partner in what we're calling the marriage trust covenant. If you don't trust yourself, it's very hard to move into trust covenant with a partner and decide to build a life together and decide to build a family together if you don't trust yourself, because ultimately you can't trust anybody else any more than you trust yourself. You can't love anybody more than you love yourself. I hope that's an aha moment for you when you listen to that, because that is the fact. So everything starts with home, yourself at home. So when you build a trust covenant with a partner, you want to have trust is everything really is threefold, a threefold cord, 3 levels, 3 layers. Everything really moves in 3 layers. So for example, let's say we have a young man and he's looking for a life partner, he's looking to build a family, he wants all this. So if he's wise and he thinks down the road, he will trust his gut and he will say, I need to build a structure to start building the foundation for my legacy. And that's where the foreign grantor trust comes in, a family trust. So he's like, okay, I know that I need to build this structure so I can move safely into trust with, the partner that I choose, my family, and so on. So let's just say he creates the Smith Family Trust. So that trust is created, that trust is built, all his paperwork's done. He follows the instructions and literally goes and gets a bank account opened, Smith Family Trust. He's moving, he's operating in it. He trusted his gut, followed his intuition, and he has that ready. Now he meets a young lady who's he wants to build a family with. He wants to have a life partnership with. Now look at the difference between somebody that's just randomly out there, that hasn't trusted their gut, that hasn't built anything. Look at the difference between those two scenarios on how the foundation of those two relationships or partnerships are going to go. You can really see a huge difference. So now he's got his trust already fully built and operating. Now he's ready to bring a young lady on board and build a family and build a trust covenant, right? So that trust covenant falls now under his family trust, which was built from his trust of himself. It's 3 levels. Then he finds the young lady, they agree and trust, they decide they're going to trust each other, they write, and this is what's done mostly in trust covenants. You write your agreements with one another. There's no template, there's no this, there's no that. You write your agreements with each other, your vows or agreements or contracts. You two write it yourself. So it's not just some random thing and I say, oh yeah, I do. Do you agree this? Do you agree that? Oh yeah, I do. No. You write what you want to say because this is critical. This is a foundation that must be strong. We can't leave holes in the foundation. So once you've got that in place, you have a very, very strong trust built on 3 levels. And when that trust has been built that way, it's very difficult for that to fall apart, because when you build trust, you put lots of attention. It becomes very important to you. If there's an issue, which there always will be, we have two distinct individuals that are coming together. There's always going to be differences and things like that. But because you have built a strong foundation of trust, you also trust that you guys will work things out. You have agreements, and you don't stop with just the initial agreements. You decide, you sit down together before you have your children, you make agreements, you look at every aspect of what things are, from where you birth your child to, how you're going, are you going to sell the child's soul? Are you going to keep it in trust? How are you going to operate? You need to sit down and write out your agreements as they come up. Because they say talk is cheap, words are cheap, and especially nowadays, the way people have been brought up with no trust, with no sense of duty or trust. The sad thing is that they can say words all day and never keep them. They don't keep their word. They don't realize how powerful their word and that their word is trust. So that's a key part of everything. And believe me, this whole world is built on relationships. This whole world is built on relationships. Relationship to yourself. Relationship to all the people around you that you work with. Relationship to trusting your gut, trusting your intuition, your God self, your higher self, God. That's the trust that must be there for us to create what it is that we're wanting to create. So, with that being said, you guys are on the same page. You're creating contracts as you go along, agreements. You're signing them on paper. And there's something very unique about trust. When you put your trust on paper, the words become alive. You can go back to ancient times. They always would write things on a scroll and they would seal it with their blood. There was a reason for that. That's what built a strong, strong trust covenant. So that is something we definitely need to rethink. They say that our world cannot be any stronger than the relationships in the world. And that's the truth, that's the fact. Which cannot be, again, let's go back to the relationship with ourselves. Do we trust our intuition? Or do we think that sounds crazy? That's not what I was programmed. That's not what I was taught in school. That's not what I was taught in church. Because it sounds crazy according to what the culture has programmed us to think. So now we have this picture of this family that we've showed how you're going to build. We have a family trust. The whole family is moving in trust, right? Let's say this family has decided they want to have a business. Let's just say the father decides he wants to be in construction. He loves building. So his family's all in the family trust. He's got everything secure. He feels confident in himself. He trusts his gut feeling, his intuition. And the mother trusts him as well because they have built that trust. It's strong. So he decides he's going to create a new venture, and he's going to start a construction business. So he has a second foreign grantor trust set up just for his business. His business, let's just say it's Smith Construction. Let's just use that. He's got Smith Family Trust already. Now he's got Smith Construction. So it's all set up, all established, as we do with ANPC International. Set everything up. We give you all the instructions, the paperwork you need for opening bank accounts and so on. So he gets that done. He goes and sets up his bank account, and he starts operating with that trust. Now, here's an important thing, is that when you have a client or a potential client, they come to you and they want your company to give them a bid on building a garage, let's say. So the way you create your bids and your contracts is the utmost important, because that is where you build your trust on the bids and the contracts, the agreements that you're going to have with the other party. So you want to create your own. You don't want to just go to an office store and get, your own, just some random bid. You want to create your own bids, your own templates. And there always needs to be fine print on the bottom or back of that contract or agreement. And one of the things that you want to be sure you say is all exchanges are private between parties and in lawful money pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 411. I'll say that one more time. All exchanges are private between parties and in lawful money pursuant to 12 U.S.C. 411. And I believe it's Public Law 70-10. Don't take me on that for sure. I don't have that in front of me. I believe it's Public Law 70-10. Public law is our law. Statutes and codes were actually taken off of the public laws for the attorney's use. So if you find the public law that they created the statute and code off of, it's best if you list the public law first and then put the code in parentheses, just because of the way they have it structured. So in example, you could say, all exchanges are private between parties and in lawful money pursuant to Public Law 70-10. in parentheses 12 U.S.C. 411. Now what that does is it takes you to the private side or the asset-backed side of the money system, because the law says if there's a private exchange between parties, the government can never get involved. Private agreements, private exchanges between parties. And when you claim the lawful money side of the currency that we have right now, that's not taxable. You have two sides. You either have income or lawful money. Lawful money is never taxable. Income is always taxable by default because you're volunteering. So that's very important to know. So when he has that signed, let's just say he has a client that he finishes a job, and they're going to give him a W-9 to report, right? So what he's going to do is he'll take the W-8 that we supply him with his trust papers, not a W-8 bin. Don't get confused. There's people out there trying to say use a bin. No, you don't. It's a W-8. So the straight up W-8 he takes and he gives that back to them because he doesn't use W-9s ever. His trust is operating as foreign status. So therefore it's not under the jurisdiction. So they can send in W-8s on him all day long. And it means nothing because per the IRS, the way the trust is set up, there's no tax reporting requirements whatsoever. And so now he has it in place where everything is private exchanges between parties. Do you see how powerful it is? Per the law, no government can get involved in private exchanges between parties. So that's just in a nutshell how he would operate his business. And let's say the wife decides she's going to operate a second little business. Maybe she wants to do baking for people. Now, we know that a lot of states have these, you have to have a commercial kitchen if you do this, if you do that. Now, realize when you do private exchanges between parties, all of that goes out the window. They cannot regulate private exchanges between parties. Now, you can even go as far as to have your trust, and again, it's the organization, the way the paperwork is done, to operate as a private members association, where all your clients, your baking clients, become a part of your private member association. Now, private member associations are very powerful. We will get into that in another class. But if she has a baking business to supplement their, we're not going to say income, to supplement their credits, let's say it that way. Because again, remember, everything that comes into a trust is a credit. It is not an income. Don't ever claim it as income on anything. Always strike out the word income and write credit. That is so critically important, because when you come in with a foreign grantor type trust and you say, I have X amount of income for this year, you just contracted with an adhesion contract saying that you just pull that under their jurisdiction. Do not do it. Always strike it out on any form you're doing and write credit. Okay, I brought in $250,000 worth of credits this year. That's your report. The 1041 NR, non-resident alien, 1041 NR is the form to use for reporting credits. That's an editable form that the attorneys have online, 2007. They put it out online saying that the attorneys that create, the law group that creates the forms for IRS, made a statement that they are aware that there's not forms for every type of trust. So when you have a type of trust that they don't have forms for, which they don't, that you can create your own or edit something. So the 1041 NR is a draft that they put out there in 2007. You literally can take it, edit it, put in the right year, take it where it says, the spot where it says income, trust income, and you take the word income off and you put credits. Pretty simple. Again, you can only claim credits, not income. So in a nutshell, that is how you are going to move in trust. We're going to get into the property aspect of it at a different class, where we will talk about moving your property into trust, your family house, your family home, your family cars, and so on. But for today, this is what we want you to think of when you're moving in trust, all aspects of moving in trust, from yourself to your partner, to your family trust, to your business trust, and so on. So that's what we will be going over, or that's what we've gone over today, and we will see you in a further class.